Before Netflix algorithms and streaming services, Hollywood was already crafting mysteries that would make Christopher Nolan weep. The 1940s gave us films with twists so complex, plot structures so intricate, that modern screenwriters still steal from them. These black-and-white masterpieces didn't need CGI or jump scares to mess with your mind. Phantom Lady, 1944. Robert Siodmak grabbed a Cornell Woolrich story and turned it into pure psychological torture. Scott Henderson takes a mysterious woman to a show. When he gets home, his wife is strangled, and nobody remembers seeing this phantom lady. The cops throw him on death row while his loyal secretary Carol becomes the detective, hunting through jazz clubs and shadowy bars for witnesses who've suddenly developed amnesia. What makes this film genius is how Siodmak flips the gender roles. Ella Raines becomes the hard-boiled detective while the men crumble under pressure. The film's expressionist shadows and that famous drum sequence where a sweaty jazz musician pounds out his guilt still gives audiences chills. Critics called it the first great female-driven noir, and Raines proved women could carry these dark tales just as powerfully as Bogart or Robinson. The Dark Mirror, 1946. Olivia de Havilland playing twins, one good, one evil, in a murder case that breaks every rule in the psychology textbook. When a doctor gets killed, both Ruth and Terry Collins become suspects. Problem is, they're identical twins, and one has the perfect alibi while the other doesn't. Director Robert Siodmak uses split-screen photography that was revolutionary for 1946, seamlessly putting de Havilland in scenes with herself. The film dives deep into psychological testing and Rorschach ink blots, stuff that felt like science fiction to 1940s audiences. De Havilland, known for playing sweethearts, goes full psychopath as the evil twin, delivering chilling line readings that proved her dramatic range. The mirror metaphor gets twisted throughout, with reflections becoming lies and truth becoming impossible to distinguish. Box office pulled in solid numbers, but critics were split on whether the psychology was too heavy for mainstream audiences. The Spiral Staircase, 1946. A mute woman trapped in a house with a serial killer who targets women with disabilities. Dorothy McGuire plays Helen, a servant who witnessed a traumatic event and lost her voice. Now someone's hunting women like her, and she's stuck in a creaky Victorian mansion during a thunderstorm. Director Robert Siodmak creates pure terror using shadows, staircases, and that famous eye motif. The killer's point-of-view shots, focusing on victims' physical imperfections, were genuinely disturbing for the time. What elevates this above-standard thriller territory is McGuire's performance. She carries the entire film without speaking, using only facial expressions and body language. Critics praised it as a masterclass in visual storytelling. The film made serious money and spawned countless imitators, but none captured Siodmak's ability to make architecture itself feel menacing. The Locket, 1946. John Brahm directs this twisted tale told through flashbacks within flashbacks within flashbacks. Nancy starts as a young girl traumatized by a false theft accusation. Now she's a kleptomaniac who destroys every man who loves her. The film's structure is insanely complex, jumping between timelines as different characters reveal their version of Nancy's story. Lorraine Day gives a powerhouse performance as a woman whose childhood trauma created a monster. What's brilliant is how Brahm makes you sympathize with Nancy even as she ruins lives. The film noir elements blend with psychological drama in ways that predict later films like Vertigo. Box office was modest, but film scholars now recognize it as one of the most structurally innovative noirs of the decade. The multiple narrator technique influenced countless later mysteries. Black Angel, 1946. Dan Durya and June Vincent team up to clear a condemned man by finding the real killer. Based on a Cornell Woolrich novel, this film takes the standard detective story and adds layers of alcoholism, obsession, and moral ambiguity. Durye plays an alcoholic songwriter whose wife was murdered. When another man gets framed for the crime, Durye partners with the guy's wife to find the truth. Director Roy William Neill, fresh off the Sherlock Holmes series, brings that same attention to clues and red herrings. The film's nightclub setting gives it a seedy atmosphere that was pure 1940s noir. Duryea, usually cast as the villain, gets to play the tortured hero for once. Critics noted how the film managed to make alcoholism sympathetic without glamorizing it. The mystery keeps viewers guessing until the final frames, with a solution that feels both surprising and inevitable. My Name is Julia Ross, 1945. Nina Foch takes a job as a secretary and wakes up imprisoned in a seaside mansion, being told she's someone else entirely. This 65-minute thriller packs more tension than most 2-hour films. Julia answers a newspaper ad for a live-in secretary position. Next thing she knows, she's trapped in a remote house where everyone insists she's Marion, the mentally unstable wife of the family's son. Director Joseph H. Lewis creates genuine claustrophobia using the mansion's Gothic architecture. The gaslighting elements feel genuinely disturbing, especially Foch's growing desperation as reality becomes negotiable. What makes this special is how Lewis treats Julia's situation seriously rather than as melodrama. She's not a helpless victim, but a smart woman fighting back with limited resources. The film cost almost nothing to make, but became a sleeper hit that influenced later psychological thrillers. The Woman in the Window, 1944. Edward G. Robinson plays a criminology professor who meets a beautiful woman and ends up hiding a murder. Fritz Lang takes what seems like a standard noir setup and twists it into something much stranger. Professor Wanley becomes obsessed with a portrait of a woman, then meets the subject of the painting. When her jealous lover attacks Wanley, the professor kills him in self-defense. The cover-up that follows becomes increasingly complex as Wanley's friend, the district attorney, investigates the very crime Wanley committed. Lang's direction creates a nightmare atmosphere where ordinary middle-class life becomes a trap. Robinson, known for gangster roles, plays against type as an intellectual drowning in circumstances beyond his control. The film's ending was controversial then and remains divisive now, but it perfectly captures the psychological themes Lang was exploring. Stranger on the Third Floor, 1940. Often called the first true film noir, this Peter Lorre vehicle explores guilt, paranoia, and the unreliability of witness testimony. Reporter Mike Ward testifies against Joe Briggs in a murder trial, but later starts doubting what he saw. When Ward's neighbor gets killed, he becomes the prime suspect. Director Boris Inkster creates a surreal atmosphere using German expressionist techniques that were revolutionary for American cinema. Lorre plays a mysterious stranger who may or may not be connected to both murders. The film's exploration of paranoia and urban alienation predicted themes that would dominate noir for the next decade. What's remarkable is how the film questions the reliability of perception itself. Ward's certainty about what he witnessed crumbles under scrutiny, making viewers question their own assumptions. Critics initially dismissed it, but film scholars now recognize it as a foundational noir text. The Web, 1947. Vincent Price stars as an industrialist who hires a bodyguard to protect him from threats, but nothing is what it seems. Michael Gordon directs this corporate noir that feels surprisingly modern in its portrayal of business corruption. Leopold Kroner claims he needs protection from a vindictive former employee. He hires Bob Regan, an ex-cop, as his bodyguard. When Regan shoots the supposed threat in apparent self-defense, he discovers he's been manipulated into committing murder. Ella Raines plays Kroner's secretary, who teams up with Regan to expose the truth. The film's examination of corporate malfeasance was ahead of its time. Price, before he became horror royalty, delivers a chilling performance as a businessman who treats murder like a spreadsheet entry. The web metaphor gets played out literally as Regan finds himself trapped in an increasingly complex conspiracy. Christmas Holiday, 1944. Deanna Durbin, known for wholesome musicals, plays a nightclub singer married to a psychopath in this Robert Siodmak masterpiece. Lieutenant Charles Mason gets stranded in New Orleans and meets Jackie, who tells him about her husband Robert, a charming sociopath currently in prison for murder. The film unfolds through flashbacks as Jackie explains how she met Robert and discovered his true nature. Gene Kelly, in his only villainous role, is genuinely frightening as a man who kills without conscience. Durbin's transformation from innocent girl to hardened woman shocked audiences who knew her from light comedies. Siodmak's direction emphasizes the seediness of the New Orleans setting, using jazz music and nightclub atmosphere to create moral decay. The film was based on a Somerset Maugham novel and maintains that author's cynical worldview. Critics praised Durbin's dramatic range, though audiences were initially confused by seeing their favorite singer in such dark material. The Lodger, 1944. Laird Cregar gives a powerhouse performance as a composer obsessed with a dead music hall singer in this John Braham-directed thriller. Set in Victorian London, the film follows Mr. Slade, a mysterious lodger who rents a room from the Bonting family. When music hall performers start getting murdered, suspicion falls on Slade, especially after the landlords discover his room is filled with pictures of the latest victim. Cregar's imposing physical presence and intense acting create genuine menace. The film's period setting allows Brahm to explore themes of artistic obsession and class conflict. What sets this apart from standard serial killer films is its psychological complexity. Slade isn't a simple monster, but a tortured artist whose grief has twisted into something dangerous. The film's London atmosphere, recreated on Hollywood soundstages, feels authentically foggy and threatening. Critics praised Cregar's performance, noting how he made Slade both sympathetic and terrifying. The Blue Dahlia, 1946. Alan Ladd returns from World War II to find his wife cheating and ends up suspected of her murder. Raymond Chandler wrote the screenplay specifically for Ladd, creating a character that fit the actor's tough but vulnerable screen persona. Johnny Morrison discovers his wife Helen has been unfaithful and has let their son die through negligence. After a confrontation, Johnny leaves, only to learn later that Helen has been murdered. The investigation reveals a complex web involving nightclub owners, crooked cops, and other war veterans struggling with what we'd now call PTSD. Veronica Lake provides the love interest as Joyce, the estranged wife of the real killer. Director George Marshall keeps the pace tight and the atmosphere appropriately cynical. The film's treatment of veterans' readjustment issues was groundbreaking for 1946, addressing problems that mainstream Hollywood usually ignored. Chandler's dialogue crackles with his trademark wit and world-weary wisdom. The Mask of Demetrios, 1944. Peter Lorre and Sidney Greenstreet investigate the life of a dead criminal in this adaptation of Eric Ambler's novel. Mystery writer Cornelius Layden becomes fascinated by Demetrios Makropoulos after the man's body washes up in Istanbul. Layden decides to research Demetrios' criminal career, tracking his path through various European cities. Along the way, he meets Mr. Peters, who has his own reasons for being interested in Demetrios. Director Gene Negulesco creates a complex flashback structure that reveals Demetrios' crimes piece by piece. The film's European locations, recreated on studio backlots, give it an international scope unusual for 1940s thrillers. Laura and Greenstreet's chemistry, established in The Maltese Falcon, makes their partnership compelling. What emerges is a portrait of corruption spreading across continents, with Demetrios as a symbol of moral decay. The revelation that Demetrios might still be alive sets up a climax that questions the nature of justice and revenge. Crack Up, 1946. Pat O'Brien plays an art expert who has a mental breakdown in a museum. Or does he? George Steele remembers crashing a train, but there's no evidence any accident occurred. When he tries to explain what happened, he sounds delusional. The investigation reveals a conspiracy involving art forgery and murder. Director Irving Reese uses the museum setting to create a world where authenticity becomes impossible to determine. O'Brien's performance captures the confusion of a man whose reality has been systematically undermined. The film's exploration of gaslighting techniques was ahead of its time, showing how someone's sanity can be questioned to cover up crimes. What makes this especially effective is how the audience shares Steele's confusion, never quite sure what's real. The art forgery plot provides intellectual weight while the thriller elements maintain suspense. Critics noted how the film managed to make museum exhibition techniques genuinely exciting, turning static displays into dynamic plot elements. Hollow Triumph, 1948. Paul Henrade plays Johnny Moeller, a criminal who undergoes plastic surgery to impersonate a psychiatrist and escape his past. This psychological thriller takes identity theft to terrifying extremes. After a failed casino robbery, Johnny discovers he looks exactly like Dr. Victor Bartok, a successful psychiatrist. Johnny kills Bartok and takes over his life, complete with facial surgery to match a scar. But Johnny's criminal mind can't handle the intellectual demands of psychiatry, and his new identity becomes a prison worse than any jail. Director Steve Sekely creates a suffocating atmosphere where Johnny's desperation grows with each scene. The film's exploration of imposter syndrome was ahead of its time, showing how someone can be trapped by their own deception. Joan Bennett plays Evelyn, Bartok's secretary who becomes suspicious of the personality changes. What makes this especially disturbing is how Johnny's criminal instincts sabotage every attempt at legitimacy. The irony cuts deep when Johnny realizes he's stolen a life that's more miserable than his own. Critics noted how the film turned the American dream into a nightmare, showing that reinvention can become self-destruction. These forgotten masterpieces prove that complexity doesn't require modern technology, just brilliant storytelling and an understanding of human psychology. While today's thrillers rely on quick cuts and loud soundtracks, these films built suspense through shadows, dialogue, and the slow revelation of character. Which of these twisted tales will mess with your head the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And here's the real question that'll keep you up tonight. If these filmmakers could create such intricate psychological puzzles with 1940s technology, what does that say about the laziness of modern Hollywood mysteries?